In a world where divorce is not allowed, society would be forced to confront the deep and lasting implications of a permanent marital bond. Imagine waking up each day knowing that no matter how unhappy, mismatched, or even unsafe your marriage is, you have no legal means to end it. This hypothetical scenario instantly changes the way people approach relationships, alters the institution of marriage itself, and reshapes cultural, economic, and emotional landscapes. Without the legal option to dissolve a marriage, couples would enter into this union with an even greater sense of caution, but also with the looming pressure of permanence. The romantic ideal of "till death do us part" would transform from a poetic vow into an unshakable legal reality. In such a world, the very idea of love might shift from a feeling that can evolve over time to a binding contract that must endure all circumstances, regardless of emotional or practical difficulties. The immediate effect of banning divorce would likely be a significant decline in marriage rates. Young people, aware that marriage would be a one-way street, would hesitate to commit unless they were extremely certain. Long-term dating might become the norm, and cohabitation without legal marriage would likely increase dramatically as people try to enjoy companionship without locking themselves into an unbreakable bond. This trend could change the legal structure of relationships entirely, leading to more informal partnerships and fewer traditional family arrangements. The stigma around living together without marriage might disappear completely, not because of liberalization, but because marriage itself would become such a high-stakes gamble. People would weigh every possible factor before marrying: financial compatibility, emotional stability, family values, even political beliefs, knowing they could not simply walk away if things went wrong. Inside existing marriages, dynamics would change profoundly. Without divorce as an option, couples might put more effort into compromise and problem solving. Marriage counseling could become a standard part of life, not as an occasional rescue mission, but as ongoing maintenance, much like visiting a doctor or dentist. However, while some relationships would indeed grow stronger under this system, others would suffer in silence. The inability to leave an abusive or deeply unhappy marriage could create dangerous situations, trapping individuals in harmful environments. This raises urgent ethical and human rights questions. Should the preservation of marriage outweigh personal safety and freedom? Governments in such a world might attempt to address this by offering state intervention programs, mediation services, or even legal separations without formal divorce. But these measures would still stop short of giving individuals the freedom to remarry or fully move on. The economic consequences would be complex. In many countries today, divorce leads to the division of assets, child support payments, and alimony, mechanisms that can cause short-term financial hardship, but also allow individuals to start anew. Without divorce, financial entanglements would remain locked in place. Couples with joint debts or investments would be tied together indefinitely, which could be disastrous if one partner mismanages finances or engages in reckless spending. On the other hand, the stability of two-income households might strengthen certain economic sectors, particularly housing markets, as families would be less likely to sell homes and relocate due to separation. Businesses that currently thrive on divorce proceedings, law firms, real estate agencies, even dating services targeting divorcees, would vanish or adapt to new markets. Children in a no-divorce society would have very different experiences. On one hand, they might benefit from growing up in a two-parent household, free from the disruptions of custody battles and shared parenting schedules. On the other hand, they might also be forced to witness constant conflict if their parents are unhappily bound together. Research on children from high-conflict families suggests that stability is only beneficial when accompanied by a healthy home environment. Without the escape hatch of divorce, many children could grow up in atmospheres filled with resentment, hostility, or neglect, which could have long-term emotional consequences. Schools and community organizations might step in to offer emotional support, but the underlying issues would remain unresolved. Culturally, the meaning of love and marriage would transform. The romantic notion of finding the one might give way to a more pragmatic approach, where people prioritize stability, shared values, and conflict avoidance over passion and emotional chemistry. Dating might become a more rigorous and cautious process, almost like a job interview, with each party conducting exhaustive background checks to ensure compatibility. Families could also play a larger role in partner selection, as the stakes of making a poor choice would be much higher. Arranged marriages might see a resurgence in some societies, not necessarily for cultural reasons, but as a way to ensure that a partner meets practical and social expectations. Religions that already discourage divorce might find their teachings reinforced by the law, while more liberal religious groups could resist such restrictions, arguing that compassion and personal freedom should take precedence. In a globalized world, countries with a no-divorce policy might experience cultural clashes with nations that maintain liberal divorce laws. International couples could face complex legal dilemmas, with one spouse trapped under restrictive laws in their home country while the other has legal rights abroad. This could even influence patterns of migration, as individuals might choose to live in countries where personal freedom in marriage is protected. In terms of mental health, the effects could be significant. For some people, the security of knowing a partner cannot leave might reduce anxiety and foster deeper trust. For others, the inability to exit a toxic relationship could lead to depression, hopelessness, and other psychological struggles. Therapists and support networks would likely see increased demand, not for navigating breakups, but for coping strategies to endure relationships that cannot end. Mental health campaigns might focus on resilience, emotional regulation, and conflict management, framing these as essential life skills rather than optional self-improvement. Social inequality could also become more pronounced. In a system without divorce, wealthier individuals might find unofficial ways to live apart, maintaining separate residences, funding discrete relationships, or even traveling abroad to seek legal dissolution in countries that allow it. Meanwhile, lower-income individuals could be stuck in unhappy marriages without the means to escape physically or emotionally. This could widen the gap between social classes, creating a hidden world where the rich quietly find ways to bypass the rules while the poor remain trapped. Interestingly, banning divorce could have ripple effects on dating culture itself. If marriage is irreversible, casual dating might decline in favor of long-term cohabitation without legal binding. Dating apps might adapt by focusing heavily on compatibility algorithms, personality assessments, and in-depth lifestyle questionnaires. Relationships would be approached with the seriousness of a business merger, with emotional compatibility, financial stability, and even genetic compatibility analyzed before a commitment is made. The legal system would need to create new frameworks for situations currently resolved by divorce. Child custody arrangements would still be necessary in cases where parents live separately, even if they remain legally married. Property disputes would require new legal channels, possibly creating a new class of permanent separation cases, where couples are legally bound but financially independent. In effect, society might reinvent divorce under a different name, proving that while the concept can be banned in law, the practical need for separation is deeply embedded in human relationships. This scenario could even affect broader societal structures like gender roles. In countries where women have historically relied on marriage for economic stability, banning divorce could reinforce traditional gender dynamics, making it harder for women to leave unhealthy situations. Conversely, in more egalitarian societies, the inability to leave could lead to greater calls for personal autonomy, economic independence, and reforms to ensure equality within marriage. Activist movements could emerge to challenge the policy, framing it as a violation of human rights. The ripple effects might even extend to crime rates. If people cannot legally separate, some might resort to illegal means, identity fraud, fake deaths, or even violence, to escape an unwanted marriage. Law enforcement agencies would face the challenge of investigating these cases while dealing with the social unrest such laws could cause. Public protests, underground movements, and international pressure might eventually force governments to reconsider. The very concept of love stories and romance in popular culture would shift. Movies, novels, and television dramas that now feature divorce as a plot device would need new narratives. Stories might focus on enduring hardship, finding love within limitation, or the moral dilemmas of pursuing romance outside of an unbreakable marriage. This cultural shift could reinforce the permanence of marriage in the public imagination, but it might also romanticize endurance over genuine happiness. In the long term, banning divorce could lead to a paradox. While it might initially strengthen the institution of marriage by making it more deliberate, It could also erode its value if too many people remain trapped in loveless unions. Marriage might come to be seen not as a celebration of love, but as a legal trap, causing more people to avoid it altogether. This would have demographic consequences, potentially lowering birth rates as couples avoid the risks associated with permanent marriage. Ultimately, a world without divorce is a world that forces individuals to reconcile personal freedom with societal stability. It raises profound questions about the balance between protecting the sanctity of marriage and safeguarding human happiness. In such a society, every wedding vow would carry the full weight of permanence, and every romantic decision would be made under the shadow of irrevocability. Whether this would lead to a stronger, more committed society or a more cautious, emotionally restrained one is a question that could only be answered by living through it. And once the law is in place, there would be no going back.